My name is Rowan Hale. I am 28 years old, and at Saturday dinner my parents told me they'd already pulled $120,000 from my rainy day fund to buy my brother a SUV and lock a studio lease, then slid a pin across the supplies table and said, "Just sign to tidy the paperwork." The television over Dad's shoulder played silent touchdowns. Lemon cleaner stung the air. Forks paused mid-clink. Mom smiled without her eyes. I felt the floor tilt, not the room. I said nothing once. But what they didn't know was, before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. Drop your city in the comments so I know who's at the table with me tonight. If you've ever had your name used as a family fund, share this with one person who needs proof that boundaries are allowed. The first lie I learned to live with was that a clean house meant a clean story. Our kitchen always smelled like lemon cleaner, even on nights when the sink was a bruise of dishes, and the television in the next room was replaying the same touchdown with the volume muted. Dad liked the silence it made his voice carry. Family helps family, he'd say. And if you were standing where the light from the ceiling landed hardest, it felt like an altar call. I learned early to stand just out of it. In the soft shadow you can see without being seen. Back then, I didn't realize it, but that habit would matter later. When I was 9, I came home with a certificate from the science fair, nothing big, just a ribbon and a paper that said I could build a circuit that turned a tiny bulb on. I still remember the smell of the cafeteria where they gave it to me, hot dogs, floor wax, and cold air blowing from a vent too strong for a spring night. I held up the certificate at dinner. Mom smiled with her mouth, not her eyes. Dad reached across me, tapped his knuckle against Tyler's shoulder and said, "Your brother's focused. Maybe some of that would help with basketball." Tyler took the last drumstick without looking up. I folded the paper twice, then twice again, until it fit in my pocket like gum. I swallowed the moment, but it scratched on the way down. The first time money changed hands in a way that stuck, it was winter, and the furnace died in a noise like a cough you can't clear. Our house got cold fast. I remember the taste of the air, metallic like ice, chewing my teeth. A tech came and quoted a number that made Mom's face go slack. Dad frowned at the invoice, as if the technician had insulted him. "We'll figure it out," he said, which always meant I would. I had been saving from shifts at the hardware store, an envelope labeled laptop, my block letters aiming for adult. I took the envelope out, edges squared, and slid it across. "Use this," I said. Dad squeezed my neck. "That's my son." Mom kissed my cheek and said, "We'll pay you back Friday." Friday came and went. The house got warm. My envelope didn't come back. I told myself warmth was worth the trade. What I didn't know was how often I'd barter comfort for silence. By high school, Tyler was the gravitational center of every conversation. He was taller, louder, more golden in the way light loves people who expect it. Christmas morning, he tore open a watch in a box, heavy enough to be serious. I opened a sweater, still smelling faintly like the discount bin. "Don't be petty," Mom said before I could finish the thought, as if she'd heard it bounce in my skull. Dad lifted his coffee mug toward Tyler. "Invest where returns are highest," he said. I laughed in the dry, careful way people do when they don't want to taste their own bitterness. If I could have framed that room, I'd have printed it in grayscale: the tree, the paper, Tyler's grin, my sweater folded wrong in my lap. I told myself a layered life makes you warm in different ways. The lie fit until it didn't. When Tyler graduated a semester late, I graduated from being a kid who fixes things to a kid who finances fixes. He wanted a short-term apartment near a trainer who could change everything. The landlord wanted a co-signer just for 6 months. I said no until Mom cried, the soft theatrical cry that makes you feel cruel. "Just help this once," she whispered, the way people whisper in church before lighting a candle. I signed. 2 months later, his roommate vanished and the rent didn't. The office called me at 7:12 a.m. on a Tuesday that tasted like burnt coffee and old carpet. "As a responsible party," the manager said, and then recited numbers like a recipe. I paid because credit bureaus don't care about family sagas. They care about balances. When I told Dad, he clapped my shoulder. "A man takes care of business." I nodded, but something in me rewrote the sentence to include a clause. A man takes care of his business. I didn't know how to enforce it. Not yet. There were smaller cuts that looked like kindness when you wrote them down. Tyler's tuition shortfall, just $1,200, I promise, Friday. New tires for Mom's car. The week she was so overwhelmed that the idea of waiting scared her more than spinning out on bald rubber. An electric bill we forgot, though the lights had been on when I visited. Each time I made a neat stack of receipts clipped at the corner filed in a shoebox that made dust smell like a record store. I told myself keeping proof was the same as keeping power. That worked until I needed more than proof. The first time my body reminded me it wasn't a machine I caught a fever that laid me out flat. The room spun slowly, like a subway car still moving as the doors slide. I texted that I'd be offline for a day. No one came. No one called. At 10:46 p.m., the phone lit with a message from Mom Honey. Did you remember to pay the utilities? We're late. I coughed until my ribs hurt and Venmoed what they needed. The next morning, my throat tasted like pennies and my head pounded a high nervous beat. I made tea. I sat on the edge of the tub until the steam wrote my name on the mirror. I wiped it away before it could finish. I didn't know it back then, but the person who recovers alone can sign their own releases. If there's a scene that lives behind my eyelids, it's the one where I learned to make paper talk. I was 22 standing at the counter of a copy shop that smelled like hot plastic and bored afternoons. I slid a stack of bank statements into a cheap black binder and labeled the spine with tape and a Sharpie Hale Financial. I added tabs I cut from sticky notes, utilities tuition car lease misc. I punched holes in the receipts so they wouldn't curl away from the truth. When I clicked the rings shut, the sound was a small, decisive oath. I didn't know it then, but the binder would become the only voice that couldn't be guilted into whispering. Work taught me the religion of procedure. As a quality analyst, my days are a lineup of nearly invisible choices, small calibrations that mean the difference between a device doing what it promises and a headline. Fluorescent light flattens the world into tasks. I like that. In a lab, you check the inputs, you verify the standards, you note the deviations, and the report becomes a map. At home, family turned arguments into weather, sudden unearned loud. I started running home life like a lab notebook dates, times amounts who said what changed hands. I bought a roll of tabs in yellow because yellow makes my eyes pay attention. I didn't realize I was building a case for a day I didn't want to see. Tyler learned early that a camera favors the one who leans toward it. When social media became an unofficial resume, he discovered that if he filmed the gym from a high angle and spoke in the voice people use when they're trying out charisma, the world would nod along. Number grind, number hustle, number family. He tagged me in a story about my investor with a winking emoji and a song that made everything seem inevitable. I messaged him to remove it. He replied with a thumbs up and left it. The next morning, I screen recorded the clip and laid it under the tab called Narrative. Someday, I told myself, I'll need to show someone that I didn't agree to this. I didn't know when someone would be me. On the night I turned 26, Dad toasted Tyler's business prospects over my cake. This family is winning, he said, his voice wearing that coach's whistle he keeps inside. He turned to me. Rowan keeps the trains on time, don't you? The knife in my hand hesitated over the frosting. I cut slices and handed them out. The plate that came back to me had crumbs on it, and the kind of plastic fork that bends where you need it strongest. I ate the corner that had a little more icing and told myself sweetness counts even when it's thin. I didn't know it then, but the corner you keep for yourself can be where you start. By the time I moved into my own place, I had rituals like scaffolding. I ironed white shirts on a folded bath towel because it made the fabric behave. I lined my pen with the edge of the counter before I answered hard questions. Parallel lines calm my hands. I kept a small concealer stick in the medicine cabinet to cover the purple half-moons under my eyes on mornings when I had gone to bed with spreadsheets and woke up with numbers still running. None of it was vanity. It was respect for the version of me that shows up. I stood where the window light slides from left to right and practiced speaking without shaking. I didn't realize the room itself was training me how to hold my ground. Some nights when the building settled and the radiator ticked like a metronome, counting out a slower kind of time, I opened the binder and laid the pages side by side, the way a mechanic might lay out tools before committing to the bound engine. I kept a blank sleeve at the back labeled in small letters emergency. It felt like superstition, insurance against a story I didn't want to tell. I slipped a single sheet into it once, a picture of Tyler's silent investor slide from his gym deck with my name typed under a stock image of a handshake. I stared until my eyes sanded the edges off the page. Then I closed the rings and pressed the spine with my palm until it lay flat. At family dinners, I learned the choreography of leaving things unsaid. The television cast a cold blue wash over the living room. The table held heat where our arms had rested too long on varnish. Dad carved roast beef like he was portioning out respect. Mom floated between kitchen and complaints, her back a question mark, her voice sweet until it needed teeth. Tyler talked about square footage like it was a character flaw to live small. I'd nod and stack plates. I'd load the dishwasher in a grid only I could see. When Mom said, "Don't make me tired," I'd smile and swallow and let the tired find me later at home in the quiet. If there was a lesson that kept showing up disguised as coincidence, it was this: every time I said yes to keep the room from shaking, I taught the room to shove harder. I didn't know it then, but the day would come when I let the table wobble. If you want to understand my family, you have to start with the sentences we repeat until they sound like truth. Family helps family. It's just a formality. We'll fix it Friday. A house can be built out of phrases. Ours was painted the color of good intentions wired with guilt. In my 20s, I learned to survive by building a second house, quiet and paper. The binder got heavier not because of pages, but because of what they meant. I added a thin plastic pocket labeled contacts and slid in business cards, like talismans: a bank manager who actually answered emails, a notary whose stamp never smeared, a print shop guy who knew to run heavy stock. When I said, "It needs to feel official," I didn't know it then, but those names would be my sandbags when the water rose. At work, I calibrated devices until their measurements stacked into a line that made sense. I liked the hiss of the alcohol wipes, the clean snap of a glove, the way a small adjustment could make a needle hold steady. It made me greedy for steadiness. I started treating my life like a lab: inputs, outputs, deviations. When Dad said Realman step up, I wrote it down with the date and the dollar amount he wanted me to step up to. It sounds cold, but paper is how you catch heat without getting burned. I didn't know it then, but a ledger can be a mirror. Tyler's gym came to life first as a mood board, and then as a lease he waved like a trophy. The space looked good on camera: exposed brick, high ceilings, mirrors that made you bigger if you stood close. In person, it smelled like old sweat and fresh paint fighting for the same square foot. He gave me the tour with a mic in his voice. "Imagine it," he said, "boot camps, personal training membership tiers." He touched a wall and left a clean stripe where his hand dragged through dust. "You'll want to be part of this," he said. He didn't ask. He never asked. He tagged me in a reel that night: "Shout out to my silent investor," with a rocket emoji and a song that made every cut feel inevitable. I messaged him to take it down. He replied, "Lol, leave it," branding, and left it. I screen recorded it and tightened the tab labeled narrative so it sat straighter. Around then, I started practicing how I looked on purpose. It sounds vain. It wasn't. It was armor. In my bathroom mirror, I learned to make my face communicate. "I'm here. I'm listening. I won't be moved by volume." I shaved clean, then brushed a little concealer under the half moons, the lab lights carved beneath everyone's eyes. I combed my honey chestnut hair until it lay neat, not loud. I buttoned a white fitted shirt and tucked it into charcoal trousers, the belt stitching a straight line that reassured me. In the living room, I stood where the window throws light left to right, the kind of light that gives a cheekbone and leaves the other side honest. I framed the shot: knees up, both arms visible, shoulders easy, nothing cropped. The camera showed me a person who could say two sentences and mean them. I didn't know it then, but that portrait would be the outline. I stepped into the night. Everything snapped. The first time I called the bank about something that hadn't happened yet, the woman who answered introduced herself as Nadia. "Most people call me when it's already on fire," she said. "So good morning." I laughed, the relieved kind. "I need to make it harder for anyone to say yes on my behalf." I told her. "I don't want any phone authorizations, even if my mother is on the line." She didn't flinch. "We can add a branch note: in person only, government ID, no third-party consent via conference call," she said like she was reading from a menu. I didn't know I was allowed to order from. "We can place a low threshold alert for new devices. It'll ping you every time someone tries to add one." The pen in my hand lined itself parallel to the counter. "Do it," I said. She emailed a PDF with the sentence I needed to print in bold. I slid it under a fresh tab labeled Bank Controls. I didn't know it then, but Nadia's name would land like a seatbelt click when everything else started to rattle. That summer, the house I grew up in started smelling like fresh paint even on weekdays. The living room looked wider because furniture had been nudged a half inch at a time into a realtor's version of our lives. Mom fussed with throw pillows like they could keep the mortgage from asking questions. "We're just freshening up," she said, the way you say just before a car crash. A brochure from a staging company sat on the counter, glossy and hopeful. The paper felt thick in my hand. "It'll be nice for the holidays," she added too fast. I noticed a stack of envelopes half hidden under the church bulletin, one from a lender with home equity in a font that sells calm. I wasn't invited to the conversation. I was the conversation they were trying to decorate. Diju noticed too. She's the relative who doesn't dramatize. She summarizes. We met at a coffee shop that smells like burnt espresso and new paint. She sipped slowly and listened more. I told her I was tired of being an ATM in a white shirt. I told her about the binder, the tabs, the way my heart stopped jogging when I lined a pen with the edge of the table. Bring me the one-page version, she said. People don't read novels. I went home and wrote a one-pager with a header that didn't apologize. Money I've given versus money I've been told I owe. I listed dates and amounts like grocery items. She read it and nodded once, the way you nod when something lands where it belongs. If this were in the middle of a mess, she said, I would believe you. Kay and Marco at work are the kind of teammates who don't use big words when small ones work better. They watched me rehearse saying no with my shoulders, then made me rehearse saying it with my mouth. 2 lines, Kay said, handing me a post-it. Write them, tape them inside your binder. Repeat them like CPR. I wrote, my name isn't your line of credit. I don't authorize by phone. Marco timed me. Say them without flavor, he said. Like reading a label on bleach. Because that's what you are doing, warning labels. Save eyes. We laughed. Then I said the lines again until they stopped sounding like slogans and started sounding like policies. There were signs looking back that the money conversation had shifted from bad habits to strategy. Tyler texted me a photo of a SUV at a showroom, white paint, black trim tires that grin. Manifesting, he wrote. He held his thumb over the price like that would hide the number in the air around it. Mom sent a link to a great opportunity for a strip mall corner she said would be perfect for family business. Dad sent a screenshot of a spreadsheet with a cell circled in red, $120,000. We'll make it work, he wrote. Sponsor or stay away, Tyler added in the group chat. The words sat there like a challenge, coin tossed on a bar. I drove to the showroom by myself on a Tuesday when the sky was a flat sheet of heat. The SUV was real, polished into a mirror designed to make you imagine your reflection as success. The sales guy smelled like cologne and closing. Big day, he asked. Just looking, I said. He walked me around the vehicle like it was an altar. I took a photo of the VIN under the windshield and texted it to my own email with the subject in case. The sales guy smiled like I'd blessed something. I smiled back and left before names got pulled into systems. Some nights I'd wake to the blue blink of the modem and stand there watching it breathe. The apartment sounded like a person sleeping, radiator tick, neighbor's elevator hum, a distant door thunk. I checked my phone not for doom, but for pings, new login attempt denied. Unknown device blocked. Nadia's settings did their job. The relief felt so precise it made me nervous. I didn't know it then, but habits eat through locks if you give them a sharp enough spoon. A week before the dinner that would become part 1 inch my head, Mom invited me over to try the brisket recipe for Sunday. The kitchen smelled like paprika and lemon cleaner. The television was doing sports in silence. Dad laid a manila folder on the counter without looking at me and said family agreement. It had lines for names and boxes for amounts and a cheerful clip art handshake in the corner. Just to make things clear, he said. It keeps peace. I touched the paper. It felt cheap and certain. Why does peace need a line for 120,000? I asked. Don't be dramatic. Mom said a sentence that is always about the person who says it. I slid the folder back and set my pen parallel to its edge so my hands would stop wanting to shake. No, I said, and because I was proud of how calm my voice sounded, I said the second line too. I don't authorize by phone. Dad laughed, the kind where he shows teeth. Who said phone? We're in person, he said, as if the room were a loophole. I didn't sign. I didn't take the folder. He left it on the counter like bait. 2 days later, a small thing cracked polite open. I came home to the faint, wrong smell of someone else's soap. The air had that unsettled quality a room gets when it's been opened and closed too quickly. Nothing was gone. Nothing was broken. But I found a scuff on the molding near the bookshelf at the exact height where a person could hide a phone behind a row of old paperbacks. I ran my hand along the spines and felt a wrong weight. An old iPhone off-brand case face down. I held it with a dish towel and set it on the counter beside the binder. For a second, my own kitchen sounded like a hallway, echoey, unfamiliar. I didn't know it then, but that scuffed inch of wood would be the hinge the door swung on. I powered the phone and watched it burp to life. The screen asked for a passcode. It expected me to know. I pressed the side button and saw a notification flash and disappear mail verification code. The breath I pulled in tasted like a coin. I turned the phone off and slid it into a zip bag. I took a picture of where I'd found it and printed it before the ink had time to dry. Then I stood under the window, light left side, warm right side shadow, and said my 2 lines out loud so the air could hear me. My name isn't your line of credit. I don't authorize by phone. My voice didn't shake. On the drive to my parents for that dinner, I passed the river and saw my reflection in the window like a stranger's. The white shirt looked clean, not performative. The honey chestnut hair made my face a little kinder than I felt. I touched the binder beside me. The tabs shivered on the turns, and then settled the way a person does when they decide to sit still. I didn't know exactly what would happen at the table, but I knew what I wouldn't sign with my voice to tidy anyone's paperwork. The morning after dinner, Reed Fam's cousin to our Hale chat lit up like a dashboard. Mom opened with sweetheart, closed with don't make me tired, and packed the middle with it's just a formality and family helps family. Dad sent one hard line. Confirm $120 K by Friday so we don't have to talk about money again. Tyler posted a boomerang of keys spinning on a finger, caption silent investor came through. He didn't tag me. He didn't have to. I set the phone face down and ironed a white shirt on a folded towel until the seam lay obedient. In the mirror, light slid left to right across my face. Honey chestnut hair neat, jaw clean. The version of me that makes people believe I won't flinch showed up on time. At the bank, Nadia met me with the kind of smile people wear when they're paid to clean up other people's panic. The branch smelled like wet coats and toner. She printed 2 PDFs while we stood. Fraud alert is live. Credit freeze in place. I've added a bold branch note, no phone authorizations, in person only with your government ID, she said, tapping a line that made my shoulders drop a centimeter. I also set low threshold device alerts. If anyone tries to add a login, you'll get pinged. The printer sighed hot breath. She stapled the letters and slid them toward me. Carry these, she said. Paper doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't need to. By lunch, Mom called from a number that always sounds like a favor. We'll swing by after work, she said. Dad typed up a family agreement. It keeps peace. I pictured the clip-art handshake in the corner and set my pin parallel to the edge of the counter to keep my hands from shaking. No, I said. I don't authorize by phone. We'll be in person, she said, too pleased with the loophole. Still no, I said. The silence on her end grew teeth. Kay and Marco made me rehearse in the break room between the hum of a vending machine and the smell of reheated pasta. 2 lines, Kay said. Say them like you're reading Bleach instructions. My name isn't your line of credit. I don't authorize by phone. Again, Marco said, timing me. I said them until they felt less like defiance and more like policy. He nodded at my binder. Tape them inside, he said. People respect office supplies. I taped the lines so straight the tape itself relaxed. At 3, my phone jumped. Unknown number. Text, stop making drama or we'll tell people what you said about Dad. Then delete your little binder before you embarrass us. I screenshot both, printed them in the office mailroom on paper that felt too nice for petty threats, and hole-punched them under a tab I hadn't planned to need threats. It looked small and ridiculous, gray bubbles with bad grammar, the shape of control when it thinks it's clever. When I got home, the hallway smelled wrong, someone else's soap, a ghost of citrus. Nothing was missing, but the air felt moved. I checked the bookcase first. The scuff on the molding where I'd found the old iPhone the day before hadn't learned to heal. I didn't touch the bagged phone. I took another photo of the shelf anyway, then a wide shot of the room. Documentation beats drama. Every click steadied me. At 4:22, Nadia called. Just so you know, she said, we denied 2 attempts to add your authorization over conference call. Female voices said you were on the line. The freeze and branch note blocked it. Thank you, I said. I'll annotate. I wrote the time and her exact phrasing on a sticky note and slid it behind the bank letters. If they try again, I asked. They'll hit the same wall, she said. And I'll email a summary. Mom and Dad arrived with the sun low and sideways. On the porch, he held a leather folder like a trophy. She stood half a step behind him, soft scarf, softer smile. Be our good boy tonight, Dad said, voice lowered for authority. He opened the folder. Lines for names. Boxes for amounts. Signature lines waiting like open mouths. 6 monthly installments. It will keep the peace. Mom touched my sleeve. Sign and no more talk of money at Thanksgiving. No, I said, steady. Dad tried to hand me a pin. I didn't take it. A real man steps up, he said. A real man signs his own name, I said. His mouth flattened. Then don't come home, he said. Don't bait me, I said, and kept my voice low. He laid the pen across the page like a dare. I closed the folder and put it back in his hands. The door clicked behind them like a sentence ending in a period instead of an exclamation mark. Tyler went live from the gym, the angle high, the filter flattering. Big week, he said into his front camera, sweat old under new cologne. Sponsors believe in you when others quit. He smirked, the kind that sounds like gratitude if you're far enough away. He panned across empty mats and a whiteboard that said, soft opening, circled in dry erase desperation. I screen recorded all of it and filed it under narrative. My hands didn't shake. Sierra, the realtor, called as I was aligning cutlery for no good reason. Rowan, I'm working with a Hale Marla on a potential listing. We haven't signed, but we're staging consult ready, she said. Her voice had the professional neutrality people keep for thin ice. Your name came up in financial context. Before I step in something, anything I should know, I let the light slide across my face so I could feel the left side warm and the right side honest. If equity comes up with my name, there's a dispute, I said. Document everything. Always, she said. Title search will sing its song. The way she said it made me think she'd heard a lot of off-key verses. That night I took a slow walk by the river to shake the porch from my blood. Wind lifted the hair over my left ear. I read my grandfather's sentence again under a street lamp that makes everything look like a scene. Use it for you. Back home, I placed the house spare key in a small envelope and wrote their address on the front in small, careful letters. I didn't seal it. Not a threat. A boundary made visible. The ping came at 9:11. You've been added as sponsor to program Hale Gym launch. Attached was a PDF with my name under a line that read, Silent Investor. My stomach went cold in a precise way, like stepping into a pool you were told was heated. I forwarded it to Owen, the attorney Kay's cousin swears by, with one sentence. Remove my name from any document I did not sign. He replied in 5 minutes. On it, cease and desist drafted. Also, police report advisable, re-device planted divided by OTP siphon. I laid my 2-line script on the counter and read it once more out loud to the room that had seen me practice everything else. My name isn't your line of credit. I don't authorize by phone. The radiator ticked. The binder's spine lay flat under my palm. The apartment hummed like a machine that likes its job. I slept with the lamp on. In the morning, I took the zip bag with the old iPhone to the precinct. The lobby smelled like burnt coffee and winter coats drying. A television whispered weather without sound. I sat on a plastic chair that stuck to the back of my legs and told the desk officer what I'd found, device concealed in my apartment, verification codes flashing, a brother with a key he wasn't supposed to have. He didn't blink. You want a report, he said, typing. For your records. The printer coughed out a page with a number that felt heavier than the paper could hold. I asked for 2 extra copies. He stapled them with a sound like a door latching. Keep one somewhere you don't live, he said. I slid one into the binder under a new tab. Police then drove the other to my work locker, a place that smells like fresh gloves and dust. Owen called while I was still in the parking lot. Cease and desist drafted, he said. Unauthorized use of name in any investor materials and reaccessing your accounts by deception. Also, we should prep a list pinned ins an equitable claim if money from your account helped fund the property they're trying to sell. The steering wheel was cold through the leather. Do it, I said. Send red receipts. He did. A minute later, 3 tiny banners stacked on my screen: delivered to Tyler, delivered to Marla, delivered to Graham. Silence where apologies could have lived. Nadia's email landed next with timestamps like bright beads: 2 attempted conference call authorizations, female voices. He's right here, said twice, both blocked by the branch note. She attached a PDF. Bold font, my favorite. No phone authorizations. In person only with government ID. I printed it on heavy stock because confidence looks better when it has weight. Sierra called at lunch from a number I'd saved under her name and the word neutral. Title ran a quick search, she said. Second mortgage recorded 6 months ago. Interest only. There's also an application for another line they haven't funded. It explains the sudden staging. If you're tied to the funds they used. Well, she let the sentence hang. Owen's prepping a list pinned ends, I said. She exhaled like someone who's been waiting for a floor to appear. Benji and Title can walk you through mechanics, she said. He likes things tidy. So, do I said. Good, she replied. Because this house isn't. On my way back, I swung by the showroom. The SUV sat under lights white paint, catching ceiling grids black trim, cutting the reflection into neat pieces. The sales rep recognized me like a jackpot he almost had. Back to Manifest, he said. I took another photo of the VIN and asked for the financing company's contact. He gave it with a smile that wanted to be a signature. I stood in my car and called the lender, gave them the VIN, and said one sentence: funds potentially sourced from a disputed withdrawal flag for review. The agent's voice turned professional in a way it wasn't a minute before. "Will note freeze title processing pending verification," she said, and offered a reference number. I wrote it in neat block letters and filed it. It felt like putting a padlock on a door I hadn't known was open. Tyler texted me from a number saved as his name and a heartbeat I wished I didn't recognize. "You just killed my launch," he wrote. "Then stay away from the closing." I screenshotted both. I didn't reply. My reply was the folder making a new sound when it shut, the sound of pages getting into formation. At 5, my parents stood on my porch again, the light thin and late. Dad held the leather folder. Mom held the expression that says, "I've already forgiven you for the thing I'm about to ask you to do." "Last chance," Dad said. "Sign and keep your name out of papers." I placed the small envelope with their house key in his open folder, the brass a clean glint against cheap paper. "I don't go where I'm not welcome," I said. "And you don't go through my accounts." Mom's voice dropped to a whisper meant to feel private, even in the open air. "Don't make me sick." "Kindness isn't consent," I answered. Two sentences, two rails. He closed the folder on the key by accident. The clack sounded like a small verdict. Back inside, I swapped every password and moved my most important accounts to a new bank where Nadia had a colleague waiting. I enrolled a hardware two-factor key cold metal that clicks like a seatbelt. I removed my card from the family's streaming plan and cell account and watched a row of confirmation emails stack into a spine. "You okay?" Kay asked over text. I sent a photo, the binder open tabs like yellow flags, my two-line script taped to the inside cover. "You're more than okay," she wrote. "You're ready." Marco replied with 3 words. Documentation beats drama. Benji, the title officer, had the patient voice of a man who settles arguments with stamps. "If Owen files list pendens today," he said over the phone, "we can't close to a third party until the claim's addressed. It doesn't decide truth. It forces a conversation in the right room." "That's all I want," I said. "The right room." He paused. "Bring clean copies for the seller and the agent. People behave better when paper sits between them." June met me at a coffee shop that smelled like toasted bagels. I handed her a one-page summary: dates, amounts, actions taken, the police report number, the VIN, referenced the bank letters. She read like cutting with a sharp knife. "What do you want in the room?" she asked. "Silence," I said. "And a title officer who says what's true." She nodded once. "Text me the time," she said. "I'll sit in the lobby. If you raise a hand, I'll walk in." Witnesses change rooms, even when they stay outside. When Sierra's message came, tentative closing Friday, 10 a.m., Benji title. I felt my chest empty and refill on a different rhythm. I ironed a white fitted shirt until the placket lay obedient, laid charcoal trousers over the chair, polished black derby shoes, until they gave back a cleaner version of the room. In the bathroom, I shaved and dotted concealer under the half moons, not to pretend I wasn't tired, but to show up looking like a man who decides. I combed honey chestnut hair into the part that makes my face honest. In the living room, I stood where the window throws light left to right, checked, the frame, knees up, both arms, and no crops. The person in the glass looked like he could say no without blinking, and if needed, say it twice. At the table, I built thin packets, bank letters with the bold line about no phone authorizations. Nadia's call log. The police report. Screenshots of threats. The VIN reference. The cease and desist. A single-page timeline in clean columns, and a printed draft of the list pendens with Owen's sticky flag where the date would go. I added a cover sheet that said, "Short record," in a font that behaves. Yellow tabs. Extra pins. I set my pen parallel to the folio's edge and pressed the spine until it lay flat. The binder made a quiet, satisfied sound. Machines like doing the job they were built to do. That night, the river was black glass. I read my grandfather's sentence one more time, not as a prayer, but as instructions: use it for you. On the walk back, the cold put color in my face. I slept with the lamp off and the hardware key in the bowl by the door. Friday at 9:52, I adjusted my collar in the reflection of Benji's lobby glass. The left side of my face held light. The right kept a clean shadow. My chest felt steady, not heroic. I wasn't going to make a scene. I was going to make a record. Benji title smelled like fresh toner and winter air trapped in wool coats. The lobby glass gave me back a clean version of myself, white fitted shirt, honey chestnut hair in its line, left cheek warm with window light, the right holding a steady shadow. June sat in a chair by the ficus, hands folded over her purse like a witness waiting for the gavel. She didn't stand. She just lifted two fingers, a signal. I breathed once deep enough to taste metal and pushed the door marked closing. The room was colder than the hall. Ceiling panels hummed. A stack of manila folders sat in the center like a muted centerpiece. Benji looked up from a thin laptop, glasses low on his nose, the patient face of a man who settles arguments with stamps. Sierra offered a nod from the corner, neutral black blazer, neutral pin. Graham and Marla flanked the long side of the table, Dad in a navy blazer that wanted to be a uniform. Mom wrapped in a soft scarf like a promise. Tyler leaned against the wall, arms folded, cologne sharp enough to count as a sentence. Rowan, Benji said, genial but not performative. We're waiting on the buyer's wire confirmation. Once we've got that, we'll review the deed and payoff statements. He gestured at the chairs. Have a seat. I didn't. I set my folio on the table and lined the pin parallel to its edge. The binder breathed when it opened. Paper sighed the way it does when it knows it's about to matter. Dad half smiled, the public one. You can sit, he said. We're almost done. We are. I said, my voice flat as a label. But not with that buyer. Benji's eyebrows ticked. Excuse me. I slid the first packet toward him. Cover sheet. Short record. Tabs in yellow. Page 1. Nadia's branch note in bold, no phone authorizations. In person only with government ID. Below, a time-stamped log of 2 conference call attempts, both denied. Page 2. Police report, device concealed in my apartment, verification codes, observed. Photo of the scuffed molding. Photo of the bagged phone. Page 3. VIN reference and lender hold pending review for potential disputed funds. Page 4. Draft list pendants, equitable claim tying $120,000 to this property ready to file. Benji read like a man counting very slowly. He ran a finger under a line, a habit. Is this claim recorded, he asked. Owen's courier is 5 minutes out, I said. If we can avoid recording by addressing it here, I prefer that. Sierra's pen clicked once and then went still. I've seen the second mortgage, she said, quiet, and the staging invoices. The timelines overlap. Mom tried the soft voice that works on receptionists. This is a misunderstanding. Her hand fluttered over the table, searching for a teacup that wasn't there. Rowan gets intense. It's not intensity, I said. It's math. Tyler snorted and pushed off the wall. You really brought your office binder, he said. On my mom's sale day, you brought an iPhone into my apartment, I said without looking at him. On a Tuesday. Benji cleared his throat, made a note. For the record, he said the phrase that changes air. Dad leaned forward, elbows on wood, face a map of controlled annoyance. A real man steps up, he said. If you wanted to contribute, you could have done it without the theatrics. A real man signs his own name, I said. And doesn't borrow one. Silence worked around the edges of the room like grout. I slid the second set of papers across to Sierra. If this closes to a third party today, I said, I will file list pendants within the hour. Title will be clouded. Funds will freeze. Everyone will have a longer, more expensive Friday. Benji exhaled through his nose long. He's not wrong, he said, neutral, as a weatherman reading a storm. A recorded list pendants valid on its face requires resolution before we can ensure title. We do not decide truth. We respect clouds. Mom's voice sharpened. You do this to your family. I'm not doing anything to you. I said. I'm stopping something being done to me. Benji rotated the packet and slid it toward Dad and Mom. Please review, he said. Especially the branch note and police report. Dad didn't touch it. You came to sabotage, he said. I came to offer the only clean exit on the table, I said. I took a breath that felt like stepping onto a dock. Rowan Hale, acting through Northline Alder LLC, is prepared to purchase this property at the list price minus a standard adjustment to reflect the unresolved $120,000 claim. Funds available. Close today. Conditions release and non-disparagement signed by all parties. Immediate return of any items or credentials bearing my name. Written acknowledgement that I will never be asked to co-sign or authorize by phone for any Hale family matter. Sierra looked at Benji. Benji looked at the clock. Tyler laughed, one sharp bark. You're buying our house, he said. It's a house, I said. Not a we. Mom tried to find a smaller battlefield. We didn't steal anything, she said. We were going to settle up at Christmas. Christmas doesn't fix a login from my living room, I said. Or an IP address that says home. Benji held up a palm, not to me to the moment. If the parties accept this substitution, he said, we can redraft the settlement sheet. Title can clear upon receipt of signed releases and the claim being withdrawn or satisfied as part of proceeds. Dad's face went a color I'd only seen once before the day the furnace coughed and died. Absolutely not, he said. We have a buyer. The buyer has a problem now, Benji said, tapping page 4. Cloud on title. We cannot insure without dealing with it. Sierra turned a page, then another. Rowan's offer avoids recording, she said, professional as a level. Less bleed. Faster clean. Tyler slammed his palm on the table. Water cups jumped. You're making this ugly, he said. It was ugly when you hit a phone in my bookcase, I said. He took one step like he might close distance. Benji's chair squeaked back a quarter inch. Sierra's pen moved. The notary in the corner looked up from her stamps. My phone buzzed once. Lender title processing suspended on VIN XXXX investigation pending. I didn't read it aloud. I let the silence digest it. Tyler's jaw clicked. Mom's whisper found its teeth. Don't make me sick, she said. Sign the agreement and leave this alone. I laid 2 sentences on the table like tools. My name isn't your line of credit. I don't authorize by phone. Dad stretched his hand across the space between us, palm up, a gesture he's used my whole life to collect obedience. Give me the key, he said. I took a small envelope from the folio and placed it in the center. Their house key lay inside, brass dull as a fact. Already did, I said. On my porch. You closed the folder on it. Benji folded his hands. Decision time, he said. Accept Rowan's buyer substitution with releases, or we halt and clear clouds in court. Sierra spoke to the room like rain hitting a tin roof. If we stop, you'll relist with a list pinned ends attached. You'll answer questions every showing. This, she nodded to my packet, keeps your season from bleeding into spring. Dad stared at the manila that wouldn't look away. Mom stared at me like she could will my face back into the one that didn't belong to itself. Tyler stared at the text on my screen like it had insulted him. I didn't fill the silence. Paper did. The HVAC hummed. The clock nudged a minute forward. Somewhere a copier warmed up, then slept. Fine, Dad said the word. Bitten. If we sign, you withdraw whatever that island. He jabbed at page 4. I satisfy it in the settlement, I said. And we all sign releases. Mom's mouth trembled, then set. No posts, she said. No making us look bad. Non-disparagement, I said. Mutual. Tyler leaned back and spread his hands. You think buying a house makes you a man, he said. No, I said. Signing my own name does. Benji nodded at the notary. Papers shifted, found new stacks. Sierra started drafting a new settlement on a blank form, keys clacking. The room changed key without applause. I slid a thin copy of the offer to Dad. Sign where Benji flags, I said. And this line, acknowledgement that you will never request my co-signature or phone authorization directly or through anyone. He stared at the sentence like it was a language he didn't speak. This is revenge, he said. This is record, I said. He picked up the pen. It scratched. The sound crossed a line I'd drawn years ago with cheap tape and a Sharpie. When the last page reached the notary's stamp, it made a sound like a small, decent door closing. Benji gathered the completed set. We have a clean path, he said. We'll fund to the LLC today. Releases are now binding. Mom looked down at her empty hands as if they'd misplaced a different ending. Tyler checked his phone and read what I didn't say. The notary capped her stamp. Sierra printed an extra copy and slid it into my folio. For your binder, she said. I closed the folio and pressed the spine flat. Its side satisfied. On my way out, I paused at the glass. Left side warm. Right side true. Dijun stood as I pushed the door. She didn't hug me. She didn't whisper. She raised her water glass, that tiny promise, and I nodded back. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I walked into the lobby's colder air with a house to my name and a signature that finally meant only me. The wire hit before noon. Benji's email was 2 lines and a PDF, funds posted to Northline, Alder releases executed, deed recorded. Paper closed the door with a quiet shoulder. I forwarded the file to myself twice and printed one for the binder. The stamp looked like a small moon in the corner of the page. On the curb outside, tidal winter air felt like clean glass in my chest. Across the street, A tow truck idled orange flashers, throwing slow blinks against shop windows. A white SUV sat crooked in a loading zone, hazard lights on plates half unscrewed by a man in a neon vest. I didn't cross. I didn't stare. I just let the sound of ratchet straps settling become part of the day. By late afternoon, the lender's message landed: registration hold confirmed. Title processing suspended pending fraud review. Sierra texted a single checkmark, and hours later a photo of the MLS page marked closed. She added new attempt at home equity was declined, credit freeze plus recorded deed change. Gravity had decided to help. Read chat went from bright to blank. Don't make us look bad. Mom wrote, then stopped, bound by her own signature. Dad called once and left a voicemail that tried 3 tones in 60 seconds. Coach, victim, negotiator. I saved it, then dragged the icon into a folder named after. Tyler posted a black square story with a caption about snakes. It expired on schedule. Non-disparagement is dull until it isn't. I changed locks. The deadbolt turned with the soft finality of a good lid sealing. I walked the room, slow, palms on cool door frames, like taking a pulse. The living room looked bigger, without the habit of explaining itself. In the kitchen, the lemon cleaner smell had faded to something truer: paperwood winter. I set the binder on the counter and added a new tab called House. Under it, I slid the deed, the settlement sheet, a photo. June took in the lobby of her water glass, raised like a quiet gavel. I left one bedroom empty on purpose. No mattress, no boxes, just a window that washes the floor left to right and a chair facing it. A room for choices, not for guests who treat keys like passwords. At night, I sat in that chair and listened to the house settle in its own bones. Radiator ticks, distant tires on wet pavement. A neighbor's laugh, soft then gone. I logged into the bank and watched my accounts breathe. No new devices, no new attempts. I enrolled the hardware key on the last straggler and dropped the metal fob into the bowl by the door. The click it made was the opposite of drama. It was policy becoming place. June texted, proud of your spine. Nadia sent a line I printed just for me. Branch notes remain in effect. No authorizations by phone. Owen's invoice arrived with a sentence at the bottom: use it for you. I taped that one on the inside cover. The house key to their place stayed where I'd left it, in a folder that wasn't mine. Maybe one day there will be a knock and a conversation where nobody performs. Maybe not. My name isn't their line of credit either way. In the mirror by the hall, the light moved across my face, left to right, giving shape and then shadow in equal measure. I looked like the kind of person who could hold a boundary without raising his voice. They thought cornering me would make me smaller. All they did was hand me the one weapon that doesn't run out: a signature that means only me. If any part of this felt familiar, the silent television, the pen slid across the table. Family used like a bill. Tell me in the comments what boundary you're drawing next. Where are you watching from tonight? Hit like if paperwork ever saved you, and share this with someone who needs proof they're not crazy. Subscribe for weekly first-person family dramas and quiet revenge arcs where documentation beats drama and a signature means what it says. New episodes every week, no shouting, just truth that holds. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, subscribe. This story isn't over.